A pleasant day to everyone. I am Cedrick Zabala, and for today, I will be talking about Unfolding Stakeholder Engagement by George Andriof and Sandra Waddock, 2002. In any organization or business, it's easy to get swept up to the day to day. You're like juggling new projects, customers, clients, services, technologies, objectives, and outcomes. But it is important to realize that the success of your day to day activities depends on one thing: people. In other words, stakeholders. Stakeholders can include customers, employees, community members, politicians, media, shareholders, suppliers, investors, government departments, regulators, neighboring businesses, and nearby residents. Stakeholder engagement is very important because stakeholder engagement can help by empowering people, creating sustainable change, building relationships, build a better organization, increase success, and educate. The topic outline for my discussion includes unfolding business in society, developing a stakeholder theory of the firm, reviewing strategic relationship, and unfolding stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder theory has begun to focus its attention on the importance of relationships that companies have with stakeholders, relationships that go well beyond those companies naturally have with stakeholders. It is argued that unfolding stakeholder relationships, and in particular, emerging process for stakeholder engagement, can be best understood by beginning to integrate corporate social performance or responsibility, stakeholder, and strategic relationship theories. There are three underlying theoretical areas that help to establish the conceptual foundations unfolding stakeholder relationships and engagement: business in society, stakeholder theory, and strategic relationships. The emergence of new stakeholder engagement strategies, including strategic alliance and partnerships, social partnerships, and multi-sectoral contributions, means that collaborative strategies, as opposed to purely competitive strategies, have become a critical basis for stakeholder engagement. Unfolding business in society. We have always heard the term corporate social responsibility. Defining corporate social responsibility. When we talk about CSR or corporate social responsibility, it is a form of international private business self regulation which aims to contribute to societal goals of a philanthropic, activist, or charitable nature by engaging in or supporting volunteering or ethically oriented practices. Bowen 1953 argues that businessmen have an obligation to pursue those policies and make those decisions or to follow those lines of action which are desirable in terms of the objective or value of our society. CSR rests on two fundamental premises. First, in a form of social contracting, business exists as a pleasure of society, and second, business acts as a moral agent within a society. Criticism of the concept of CSR has focused on this ambiguity. According to David and Ballstrom's definition, it states that social responsibility is the managerial obligation to take action to protect and improve both the welfare of society as a whole and the interest of organizations. Moreover, scholars and firms are using the term creating shared value, an extension of corporate social responsibility, to explain ways of doing business in a socially responsible way while making profits. Other writers such as Hay et al. And Zinisek place greater emphasis on the ethical perspective in modeling social responsibility, viewing it as a degree of fit between society's expectation of the business community and the ethics of business. One important shift is the movement from reactive postures to proactive but unilateral boundary spinning functions to interactive engagement with stakeholders. A second feature of this shift of definition is the recognition of power relationships and interdependencies. That is, movement towards a more systemic understanding of the relationships that exist among organizations and their stakeholders in societies, particularly important in any kind of relationship or engagement process. Modeling corporate social performance. CSP's distinctive features are the enhanced development of ideas of corporate social responsibility, coupled with the integration of responsibility and responsiveness through an approach involving principles, policies, processes in the corporation. There are three underlying dimensions of CSP according to Waddock and Sichran. Principles of CSR, the processes of corporate social responsiveness, and policies regarding social issues management. According to Wood, social responsiveness is a set of processes rather than a single process, and policies encompass the observable outcomes of corporate and managerial actions. In the 1990s, the term corporate citizenship began to replace CSP. Companies, as independent legal entities, are members of the countries that can be thought as corporate citizens with legal rights and duties and responsibilities. Building social capital. Social capital is the glue of connectivity that holds relationships together. Although social capital takes many forms, each of these has two characteristics in common. Social capital constitutes some aspect of the social structure, while facilitating the actions of individuals or social units within the structure. Social capital is a set of shared values of resources that allows individuals to work together in a group to effectively achieve a common purpose. Social capital can also be thought of as a potential ability to obtain resources, favors, or information from one's personal connections. The idea is generally used to describe how members are able to band together in a society to live harmoniously. Developing a stakeholder theory of the firm. Unfolding stakeholder thinking. Stakeholder thinking is a way to see companies and their activities through constituency concepts and propositions. The idea is that holders who have stakes interact with the firm and thus makes its operation possible. Management choices is a function of stakeholder influences. Consequently, the main objectives of the stakeholder research have been to identify who a firm's stakeholders are and to determine what types of influence they exert. Distinguishing stakeholder theory dimensions. Stakeholder theory has at least four types: descriptive or empirical, instrumental, normative, and metaphorical narrative. In descriptive or empirical, firms and our managers actually behave in certain ways. In instrumental, certain outcomes are more likely in firms or managers behave in certain ways. In normative, firms or managers should behave in certain ways. And in metaphorical or narrative, the stakeholder theory is a story rather than a theoretical construct. In 1999, Jones and Wicks developed a convergent stakeholder theory. This theory incorporates elements of social science approach and the normative ethics approach. Engaging with stakeholders. Stakeholder groups can be assessed against strategic aims according to three sets of criteria: influence, impact, and alignment. Managing stakeholder audiences as if they were discrete and unconnected is no longer a viable strategy. Each firm faces a different set of stakeholders, which aggregate into unique patterns of influence. Thus, firms do not engage with stakeholders individually, but rather must answer to the simultaneous demands of multiple stakeholders. Stakeholders provide a lens of viewing and interpreting important trends in the operating environment. Therefore, proactive stakeholder engagement is the right thing to do. There are problems that require interaction among multiple stakeholders for resolution. In these environments, bridging, also called as boundary spanning techniques, are needed to build on interdependencies rather than buffering them, and collaborative strategies become important. Reviewing strategic relationships, appreciating collective strategies. Business policy has characterized the organizational environment as an exogenous entity, a set of external constraints delimiting what is possible in terms of strategic action. Thus, strategic management is seen as an entrepreneurial adventure in which firms must circumvent threats and exploit opportunities. Towards strategic networking, the broad context sensitive concept of strategic management emerging in modern strategy research is based on the recognition that firms must be regarded as open systems, dependent on their environment for survival and goal achievement. Stakeholder engagement recognizes not only the complexity but also the potential benefits of strategic networks with key stakeholders. Because the firm in a strategic network benefits from cumulative processes, including both increased dependency through exchange and the development of capital. In sum, stakeholder perspective emphasizing strategic network principles, particularly for companies willing to engage with stakeholders transparently and interactively, suggests a broad analytical frame as well as new tools for solving strategic challenges. Stakeholder engagement as a source of competitive advantage. As strategy scholars have searched for sources of competitive advantage, two prominent views have emerged regarding the sources of supernormal returns. First, market-based view or MBV, associated with Porter 1980, suggests that supernormal returns are primarily a function of a firm's membership in an industry with favorable structural characteristics. Second, the resource-based view or RBV of the firm argues that differential firm performance is fundamentally due to heterogeneity rather than industry structure. Although these two perspectives has contributed greatly to the understanding of how firms achieve above normal returns, they overlook the important fact that disadvantages of individual firm are often linked to the disadvantages of a network of relationship in which the firm is embedded. Unfolding stakeholder engagement. To sum it up, stakeholder engagement can be viewed as a process for managing a company's risk, connecting with stakeholders, and building social capital. Thus, corporate responsibilities are integral or inherent in relationships with stakeholders, relationships enacted through operating policies, and a network in which companies exist. Remember that stakeholder engagement can help your organization and the people around you to achieve better outcomes, whether it's in education, connection, or engagement, or profit. Once again, this is Cedrick Zabala. Thank you for listening and have a great day.